I was just listening to the new episode of your podcast with the I can't remember his name, Sam Tarley.
James Bradley.
Yeah,
John Bradley, sorry.
he seems a nice guy.
He was lovely. And if you watch anything he's been on some of he has been on the biggest chat shows in America. He's just a lovely person. So,
Yeah, I went on a journalism junket a couple of years ago, and I met this woman, and she's really nice, and we were hanging out for a few days, and then she said to me, "Do you watch Game of Thrones?" And it's her boyfriend, and I was like, "Oh, that's pretty wild." And they're a bit of a dream couple, the two of them.
oh, well, he's just, I'd say, a really nice man. So,
Oh, smashing, cool. Well, listen, I'm just going to give you a very brief backstory on me. I was a childhood United fan, probably until, I don't know, probably until about 93, 94. And then I realised that there was a perfectly acceptable, if rubbish, football team in my own town. And from that point on, I became a Doncaster Rovers obsessive. But you sort of never really forget your first love. And I have to say, along with Mark Hughes, you were my favourite. So it is a real treat to speak to you.
that's very kind of you, sir. I think you made,
Um,
I think you made a good choice, the transformation to your local team.
it just felt stupid. I mean, it was like my dad was born in Oldham, grew up in Salford, so there was that kind of connection. But when you kind of go in, oh, I can't watch my football team. This is ridiculous. Like, and there is a football team playing down the road. But it's a very different experience, I think, growing up supporting Doncaster Rovers to what it is supporting Manchester United.
Yeah, of course. But I mean, the whole idea about it is that certainly in terms of football, um, I would have thought that football fans want to go to the game. The essence, the important part is actually going to the game. I think it was actually be able to go to the game.
Yeah. Were
And that's
you
the bit that I enjoy. Whatever I go and watch.
were you a Motherwell fan growing up?
No, no, I played for Motherwell, but I wasn't a Motherwell fan. No, I was,
Who
um, I was always a Celtic fan because the reason I fell in love with football, James, is because of the Lisbon Lions.
got
They
you?
won the European Cup in 1967. And when I went to primary school, when I was only, I think you definitely in primary one, about 4 or 5 years of age. That would have been the year after, I think, that Celtic won. And we got taken into the hall in school. You had to sit down on the floor and sit near the front because we're in the front primary one. And there was, I don't even know if I recognise it as a projector, but there was a screen, a projector on stage. The blackout curtains got shot. This guy came on and had a preamble. And I don't remember if it was colour. I don't remember if it was black and white. I don't remember if there was any commentary, but there was highlights of the 1967 European Cup final that Celtic went on to overcome a very strong internationality team to win 2-1. And I was totally smitten then. I'd always kicked the ball about in the backyard and they kicked the ball about in the playground. But I fell in love with football that day. And that's when I decided that that's what I wanted to do. Now, what's happened since that day is beyond my wildest dreams.
When did you know you were good?
I think you only know when you're good when you play against people who are older than you. Um, I didn't play an 11-side game until I was 10, 9 or 10. However, there used to be games down the park, jumpers for goalpost games, and those games involved young adults, maybe even lads up to maybe 21, 22 playing games. And I found in those games that I could look after myself and that I had some kind of skill range that allowed me to survive in that. Uh, and also part of that kind of thing is if you think back and athletic development was as important as well. It wasn't just playing football all the time. You're walking to school, you're on to school, you're on away from school. And one of the things that in those particular games is that we used to think it was vulgar to actually score a goal. It was better to stop the ball on the line,
Right. Okay.
stop the ball on the line, having dribbled past a few people, and it was last man handles, last man's a goalkeeper, even dribble around that. You stop the ball on the line, but you had to run because you knew that these older people would feel humiliated and embarrassed, and they weren't going to let you away with that. And you just had to run, and they'd be chasing after you. But I knew that there was only a certain distance that they would run before they would get out of breath or they just get fed up with it. So there was
It's
all these different challenges involved. And so within that game, you knew within your little scheme or inter scheme, you were okay.
you say you were a childhood Celtic fan, but when I was doing a bit of reading before speaking to you, I dug out some old cuttings from Shoot, and there is a profile piece of you. The type where it's what car do you drive and all that stuff. It says that you supported Liechtenstein as a kid.
Yeah, well, the part of that, James, and it's got me into curious situations since then. Was that well, I used to avidly be an avid reader of the Shoot in particular, and then Match came later on. But they always had those questionnaire things, and I thought they were dull. They were all the same,
Yeah,
and particularly when it came to the music part at the time, it was a lot of Luther Vandross,
yeah,
George Benson,
yeah.
and all these other. And I've come to appreciate it a bit more now that I've kind of wider kind of appreciation of music. However, at the time it was like, why is this old? And I thought, well, I'm not having this. And I tried to make it how I thought would be more interesting. Now, at the time when I did that, Liechtenstein didn't have a team.
Oh, really? Were they not? Were they like? Were they not con? I'm trying to remember what it is that sits outside of FIFA. Is it con?
Oh,
Con?
yeah, I know what you're talking about, but they did not have. They didn't have an international team then.
Right. So you were basically just. It was an early example of trolling, really.
Well, yeah, but that was me trying to be humorous.
Did the journalists not pick you up on it?
No, because it's one of those things that it's easy now to check different things, isn't it? You couldn't check, could you? Unless you're really in the know. I knew for whatever reason, read it. I must have read it somewhere.
I mean, in that same profile, when it gets to the favourite musicians, you say Psychedelic Furs, David Bowie, Mighty War, and Velvet Underground, which we're a long way from Luther Vandross in there. Would
Yeah,
you?
but that's factual. I wasn't making that bit up.
Yeah,
Like,
I'm,
so I think the first one I ever did James was that with when somebody was asking me questions about that, came down to a music question, and my immediate answer to that, I think it was a Scottish journalist, was the men they couldn't hang, and he thought I'd made that up.
right, right.
No, yeah, you've made that up. I said, well, why would I make up? That's pretty decent to make up. Like somebody else has made that up, and they do actually produce music.
I mean, I don't really know how to ask this without just sounding disrespectful to footballers, and obviously
Oh no, yeah,
footballers,
no problem about that. I'm not a footballer.
and obviously football has given me an equal amount of pleasure to to music in my life. But I went to see your mate Pat Nevin do a talk the other day, and
Yeah,
he was talking about music amongst football, and he was talking about Barry Horn being a
yeah.
kind of an indie rock guy, and I think he even told some stories about Walter Smith, and Walter Smith had much better taste than I might have imagined. But you don't. It's very rare that you really do hear about footballers that like, I guess, music of an indie rock variety. How did you end up there?
Um, I don't know how. I don't know where where music started from. There wasn't. We didn't. My parents didn't have a record player. Uh, I had a friend when I was 13 who had some disposable income, so I used to go to the record shop with him, and that 13, 14, yeah. So just about the time of punk, we'd go down to the record shop when he was an avid reader at NME, so he would have picked things out of that. But I think it was that whole curious kind of situation with coloured vinyl, and then it became picture discs. So there was a kind of novelty involved in it, as well as the music being really exciting. So I used to listen to that stuff in his bedroom. One of the things that I'm still in. an avid fan. As I remember, before you again the same kind of looking back, um, he had a John Cooper Cat single,
Oh, okay.
which was, I think it was, I thought it was a picture disc, but it might not have been. And just listening to those lyrics or poetry, I thought it was wonderful. But he had loads of different things you would get. Reckless Eric, the usual ones, the Clash, you'd buy that, the Jam. And he bought the first picture disc, the Cars, all sorts of things. Because he disposable income, I didn't have anything like that, So that's probably the start. But I was always interested in music because I remember reading my magazine about glam rock going back when I would have been 9 or 10, and liking T-Rex and liking Sweet and Slade. And it was Top of the Pops would have been the thing I'd have watched. That was
Yeah.
a one thing. And then you'd then start listening to the radio, and as I say, being exposed to the going shopping with him on a Saturday after I'd played football, and all this stuff would be playing all the time. You could go into the record shop and say, "Can you put that on for us?" So there was a lot of people the same minded about punk, really, and they were quite happy. All right, I'll get that, I'll get this. And it was a very thriving situation. And then when I went to England when I was 16 and started earning a little bit of money, I would buy records all the time.
I
And I was a
mean,
bit thing with it because my mate sold all those records and they're worth a fortune now.
yeah, tell me about it. I listened to the episode you did with David Gedge, and he's talking about selling his records before he goes to live in the States, and then kind of regretting it. I mean,
Yeah.
not that I want to say there's any kind of typical footballer, but between you between you studying while you're at Motherwell and also being a fan of this kind of music, did you feel different to other footballers?
I think that I've always kind of felt, yeah, I think I felt different, but I've always tried to be part of it.
Yeah,
I think that I could be a football player and be part of the dressing room because uh, I think the most important thing, I think for me, the personality. I think I always wanted to be part of a team.
yeah.
Be part of a team. You get involved in the dressing room, and you want to be supportive of the team. I mean, I think as a football player that they can be summed up in Eric's great quote about Didier Deschamps. Eric Cantona
Yeah,
described Deschamps as a water carrier.
yeah.
Is that kind of derogatory comment? I'm quite proud to that. I think that was what I was as a football player, a team player.
Well,
So I was quite happy to be involved in the team stuff, but my separate stuff, and I was quite happy to say, well, you're entitled to like what you like in any field, and this is what I like. And I was quite prepared to defend that if I needed to be. So, well, that's just because I felt that you needed to stick to what you liked.
yeah. Well, I always thought you would. I always thought you were a really interesting player in the sense that when you're at Celtic and for a long period at United as well, you're banging in goals, and you would think that was a very you kind of think of strikers as being selfish or quite individualistic, if that is a word. And at the same time, later on at United, you become, I don't know, like almost like a sort of jack of all trades in a sense. You kind of go back into midfield, and you're not that. I don't know. You're not that kind of dashing, free scoring striker, which suggests your commitment to the team. But then at the same time, outside of football, you seem very much your own dude. You seem very much. I mean, without, I don't know whether this is a kind of the wrong thing to say, but kind of quite eccentric, really.
Well, I suppose in terms of see, I love playing football, but I would never say I was a footballer if that's what you mean. I did what I wanted to do because that's what I liked, what I wanted to do, and they're entitled to do what they wanted to respect that kind of thing.
Yeah,
I wasn't going to change who I was, who I'd become at that period, who I'd become. I became this person, and I wanted to continue to be that person. And this person needed to be true to himself in order to perform on a football pitch and do what I had to do as regards to be involved as a professional football, playing and all that and being involved. But I wanted to enjoy the things that I enjoyed it. And it allowed me to it was good in that. A lot of times I took up the opposite point of view in the dressing room or on the bus or in pre-season because I wanted to be entertained, and there's always someone there prepared to attempt to debate against you for whatever reason that they felt about something. You know, a lot of the times it would be, you know, even now you get people like Brian Robson will say, "Do you still like that weird music?" And I say that as a compliment because for me it's like normal music. You know, I would have said that. Well, a lot of the stuff that if you go troll through those shoot question answers from through the 70s up until early 80s, I would have said, well, that's actually not really. That's just putting something on and it's there as in the background. I mean, if I'd have said that they went through and went, well, I really love this George Spencer, I love this Luther Vandross, but it was just a blanket kind of, oh, you all have to like this, you know?
Yeah. I mean,
And I just, I like listening to music, still like listening to music, but there's all sorts of new things that you hear that nowadays, you doesn't, seeing at the beginning, going through the 70s, I couldn't abide disco music, or I just thought that was just like a load of nonsense, you know,
yeah.
particularly around about the same time as punk. As
Yeah.
you get older, you hear something and you can't pigeonhole it as much, and sometimes a lot of the time you still hear it on the radio, so you don't know what they look like. Often you don't know what they're about, or it's just a name. This is you've heard this, you know, like that, or you're watching telly because there's a lot of great music now on in programs. I was watching the Gallows Pole the other night, and there was great music on that. You know, I thought it was quite interesting. Maybe a little bit of a side. I really interesting kind of modern play set in a different time.
Yeah, you should reach out to Ben Myers, who wrote the book. He would be amazing on on your podcast. He's an ex music journalist who now has written the Gallows Pole and all sorts of other books and stuff. But he's a big music guy as well, from the northeast. I guess that famously Graham Lasso always used to say that people used to question his they were homophobic basically because he read The Guardian. Like, you're saying about Brian Robson saying, do you still listen to that weird music? Did people think did your average Luther Vandross listening footballer think you were, did they think you were weird for liking the
Yeah.
stuff you
In
liked?
terms of yeah, I think they thought, oh, yeah, yeah. But I'm comfortable with that because I wanted to be me, and I couldn't be them, and I didn't want to even try to be them. You know, as I say, I wanted to be part of a team and be part of successful teams, but I was going to do it as me.
Yeah, that's amazing. Other than Pat, was there anyone in your football career that you found had similar tastes to you?
There's lots of people you would go on with. I wouldn't say. I mean, like you had car sharing sometime in those days. So when whoever was driving, they were in charge of the music, you know. And I remember one day that Gary Pallister, we used to he lived across the road, and Jim Layton. But Jim, for example, famously liked Simply Red, and Pally for a whole year, if not longer, had Sting's first solo album, you know, and that was all it was
Yeah.
on. I had like a 12 disc CD thing in my car, you know, so you could have some anything. I remember going, right, put that song again. I really like that one, Gary Palace, you know, and I'm looking at it, I'm going, what? Who's this, you know? And it was Joy Division, and he just liked that one track from, um, and it was, I can't remember which one it was, Transmission or something like that. Maybe Transmission.
Wow, that's
And
crazy.
he was going, "Oh, you play that again?" You know. And I'm looking at him going, "Well, you shouldn't. But you shouldn't like this.
Yeah.
This is totally the opposite of Sting, you know." But he really liked that, you know. And then I remember bizarrely, he loved the track "She Sells Sanctuary" by the Cult, another one, you know. So every now and again there'd be odd little things that would go, "Oh, I really like this," but in general, um, there wasn't really the same kind of. I mean, I just loved music, you know. I mean, that was like you that.
Yeah.
I love playing football, but I love music as well.
What did Eric listen to?
Eric, I've no idea really what I listen to.
I, I,
Um,
I kind of feel when I look at that United team, I sort of think if there's anyone in there that I would think I'd like to dig around your record collection, it's probably Eric Cantona.
I think that he would find, but again, I'm not sure he would have any. He's kind of lived a kind of nomadic experience, you know. I think like that. So I can imagine like Eric's. I can imagine Eric deciding that just to leave home and decide that that's him and just leave everything, you know,
Yeah, totally.
and then just say thanks very much. Listen, I can't stay here anymore, and we'll be in touch and just go somewhere else, you know. I could see him critique. I could see that kind of character because he did once say that he says football teams are like women. When you have nothing left to say, you have to leave.
I've never heard that quote before. What
Yeah.
did he say? Did he say that when he retired at 30?
Well, he might have done that.
Yeah. I mean, there's lots of indie acts and musicians that are famously United fans. Obviously, there's Simply Red, but let's forget about them, especially because Mick Hucknall blocked me on Twitter the other day.
What did they?
He did, yeah.
I would say that. I would say that. I would love that. If people block me on Twitter, I'd think I've achieved something, you know, to you've irritated somebody for whatever reason, you know. I'm
Yeah,
quite happy for. I see part of the thing, James, is that when you play football, you've got a choice. You can either be upset by what people say about you, but mainly about your performances, or you can just accept that that is part of the whole idea of going to football. I've always felt that people are spending a lot of their money, even more so now, their disposable income coming along to hopefully be entertained at a football game. And whatever happens in those games, maybe more prevalent in Doncaster than other places, you're allowed to behave yeah, as long as you're behaving within reason, not being, like you said, to be particularly personal about someone's look or someone's alleged sexuality or whatever, but giving a bit of banter or venting your spleen, I think that's okay. And I know that the people who are passionate about football and go to watch football would swap nearly everything to be on the pitch for 5 minutes and be shit for 5 minutes. You know,
oh yeah, absolutely.
I've always appreciated that. So I've never had an issue with any of that kind of thing. So if somebody's giving me stick on Twitter or whatever else it is, I'd just say, well, that's just the way it is. Or if it was an opinion, that's okay. I mean, we've all got opinions, and we cannot have the same opinion. So I wouldn't, and I think it's for me, it's a bit churlish and a bit childish, really, to go, well, actually, I did quite like you, or you were whatever relationship you had, but now you've said something that I don't. Well, it's going to happen all the time. You go to the pub every day, somebody's going to say something to you. You don't, I've often said things to other people that at the spur of the moment sometimes you don't think about it and they get upset about it, you know. But
Yeah, I mean, in this case, it was that I'd made a silly joke and I was about to. He'd stood me up for an interview, and I said on Twitter, I've been stood up by Mick Hucknall, which is an experience that no woman in the 90s could ever claim. And that's why he blocked me. And it was a bit frustrating because I was supposed to be interviewing him for The Observer. So obviously that never happened. And I guess I am thick skinned enough to take it, but there is part of you when you're like, oh, I've just lost 500 quid there. So, you know, it was an expensive block. What I was going to ask, though, before telling you my Mick Hucknall trauma is, obviously there's loads of footballers, there's loads of musicians that have relationships with United, you know, they run out to Stone Roses and obviously David Gedge is a fan, there's all sorts of people, Peter Hook. Did you ever come in contact with any musicians from your association with United?
well, the main ones that I bumped in, I'm still very friendly with Manny, really, you know, and
Right, yeah.
all the way through, daily, all the way through. With
Did you meet him like when you were a player?
just at the end, just towards the end, yeah.
Wow,
Yeah, he was in Primal Scream.
that's amazing.
He was working for them, yeah. And so we've kept in touch ever since. So there's other ones you bump into every now and again who tell you who they are and what they do. But the main thing is that being a professional football, particularly when United started getting more successful and they're involved in European games from 1991, 1991 onwards, you had very little free time. So, and I had a young family, so there wasn't the same opportunities there were
Yeah.
when I was at Celtic, really, going to watch gigs.
Are you on the? I presume you're on the United single with Status Quo.
Yeah.
Tell me about that.
I try to stay away from the video. And I can't sing, James. I mean, it's one of those other things you'd love to be able to do. I mean, I can't play anything just down to my lack of um, practice on any particular thing, right? So I've never spent time doing that. But yes, that's that. I tried to stay out of the way of the video as much as I could. It was one of those things you get approached for. Got approached by the managers, say at school, who wrote the song or wrote the lyrics, sorry, to the song because it's
Yeah.
an old state school. So it's
Well,
funny. Actually, I met a guy the other day who was saying to me that he loves that idea because when Status Quo, he's a United fan, when Status Quo would play their song, the City fans would walk out.
well, my local
I
team.
like that. So anyway, as the manager States Go approached to say there's an idea, round about cup final, opportunity really to make a few quid. And that's where it came from. Now, in no way did I think, I mean, Status Quo have only had two number ones, and that's one of them.
That is pretty wild. My local team are Leighton Orient, and I used to go all the time. And I used to edit Kerrang magazine, and we
Yeah.
invited Status Quo to the Kerrang Awards one year, and I got my photo taken with them, and I pulled out an Orient flag because Orient, when they win, they play Rockin' All Over the World, and I was like, oh, I'll be able to sort of show this to everyone down at Brisbane Road, and they said, what? They said, what team is that? And I said Leighton Orient, and they said who, and they didn't know who Leighton Orient was, which I thought was quite disappointing. Second oldest team in London, I believe. Anyway. Um, your son's a musician, right?
Yeah.
Does he does the theme for your podcast?
He's done a few things for the podcast, yeah.
Are you envious of your son being a musician?
Oh yeah, of course, yeah. But he's living the other dream that I would have had, yeah. If I'd meant to be a football player, I'd love to be a musician. But he did what I did with regards to football. So he started to practice. There was a piano in the house, there was a keyboard in the house. He showed an enthusiasm for music. So he had various different lessons. He had rock guitar lessons and things like that. And when he went to university in Liverpool, he decided that he would have a go at open mic night stuff, and he enjoyed it. Wrote some of his own stuff. I think he had probably still has aspirations to be an Ed Sheeran, but he is earning a living playing music. So, as I say, for me, he's doing something that he loves,
That's
and it's not
amazing.
work, and he's making enough to live quite a nice little life for himself.
When did you decide to start the podcast?
Round about lockdown, Sunday we'd been doing. I'd done live. I'd done a diary stuff in the magazine, which was quite United magazine. It was quite irreverent, really, in my kind of humour, and it seemed to be quite popular with supporters. And there was a few different guises of that, and then myself and Matthew decided, well, we'll do a little one online, for a little while, and just as something to do. And then somebody suggested that we should do a podcast. So we had a little. I wasn't that. I wasn't really that keen at the beginning because it's not really my thing. I'm very much a shrinking violet, but we.
I mean, I don't even believe that though, because
Yeah,
you have a massive wizard beard now, and
that was
you
lockdown though, wasn't it?
you make up amusing fibs in football magazines. Like you're
And I
not.
used to do that in the magazine as well. So, and one of the things that was was encouraging and also satisfying was that a lot of the stuff used to get into the papers, and the stuff that got into the papers was mainly stuff I had made up. Well, the more that I got that these people, or any kind of people, particularly in something like the Daily Mail or something like that, they'd fall for me. I thought, well, I'll just keep doing little bits of mixing it up to see if people can work out what is actually. Because sometimes there are bizarre things that happen, but sometimes I just made them up because it was a bit of a dull day or a dull week. The podcast, and anyway, with the podcast, after we'd done a couple, a friend of mine who'd lost his job during lockdown, not because of the virus, but he lost his job at that time. And he was going out walking for roughly an hour every day. And he was listening to it, and it was taking his mind off the fact that he was now unemployed and that he was going to have to find another job, And he just that kind of thought that one person would listen to something. I wanted it to be irreverent without being condescending,
Yeah, yeah.
particularly during lockdown where a lot of people were suffering in various different ways. So I wanted it to be a distraction, but I wanted it still to be humorous without it overstepping the mark. And hopefully that's what's kind of happened with it, And then at the end of every one, I'm always thinking, well, that's the last one. Nobody's going to be daft enough to appear again, So I'm always pleasantly surprised when Mark or Matthew or myself say, listen, we've got this person who's interested in being involved,
Who would you most like to get on that you haven't had on?
I don't have a wish list because you people are so entertaining, particularly that are involved in an industry where you are used to telling stories either through song or through words. And a lot of people involved, and as you'll know, James, is they like to talk. So
Yeah.
I don't, and one of the things as well, when you're talking about the answers to things, I used to think that, and maybe it's still the same. I don't know if it's the same as you, but in sports journalism, particularly when I was younger, I know it's easier now because of the internet, but I found the questions dull, and I didn't really want to interact with that question. I wanted to talk about what we're talking about, really. I was like, well, or find something. I used to think I'd be quite inspired when somebody asked me something like, wow, nobody's asked me that before about anything, not just about football. So I tried to take, well, what I did then, I thought, well, I tried to find something that these people who have been interviewed hundreds of times, if not, dozens, if not hundreds of times, find some little thing that they pause and think about or smile. It doesn't matter what it is about. And the internet's brilliant for that. If you spend enough time trolling through it.
What are you in a position where you could ask Nigel Winterburn to be on your podcast?
He's been on.
Has he been on?
Now.
I've missed that. What episode is that?
I don't know which one, but he's been on. Yeah, he came on. Yeah, he was good.
Yeah. Are you friendly now?
We've never spoken since the 90s. Never spoken. Never really. You don't tend to have friends into club really, unless you play international football or you move around. It's very rare you have that. But no, he was good, Nigel. It's out there. Yeah, so there's no issue about what happened in the past. He claimed not to remember, which is fine.
I'm not sure how he could not remember. I remember because I was 10 when it happened, and I remember just standing, just pointing at Match of the Day and just being like, my dad just being like, "Oh, they've been bad boys. Everyone's to blame," and me being like, "No, Brian's not to blame. Brian's not to blame," even though you are shooing him in the back. But that's loyalty to your club, isn't it?
Well, actually, you're not supposed to lose your temper on the pitch. But the whole thing happened. There was a couple of historical things in Nigel and us, but that event was because he had a really bad tackle on Dennis Irwin. And for me, Dennis was fortunate to come out of that without a real bad injury, if not a career-threatening injury. And every now and again, you go into the red zone. I was in that red zone, lost it completely, and the culmination is on video for posterity.
Yeah, I'd never seen anything like that at football at that point in my life.
And there's been many of them now.
Yeah, no, totally. My best mate Ross, who is in a band called the Futureheads, is an enormous United fan,
I've heard of them, yeah.
and he wanted me to ask you some United fan questions. He says, "What's the best goal you've ever scored?"
I, I don't have. See that I like. I don't. It's quite. I look at these in different ways now. James is that I don't have a favourite goal. I don't have a favourite game because I see it as a whole kind of whole thing that all fits together into what happened.
That's such a
Uh, so,
that's such a philosophical way of looking at it, though.
this is how I look at them. So I look at the goals as if they're my children, right? And I wouldn't like to pick one over the other because that one would be jealous or upset that I'd picked that one and not that one. So that kind of same with the games. You have your favourite game and different things. I don't. There's some kind of moments you remember because one of my favourite games. I was in the first half. It was a game at Goodison, um, Everton, and I did not do one thing right. Not one thing, which is quite an incredible. You couldn't if you went out and tried to do it. If you went out and tried to play badly and still look as if you were trying, it'd be almost impossible. And that's what I did. I was trying, and I didn't do one thing right. And I thought, I'm not sure I'm going to come out in the second half. I'm certainly getting it from the manager. Fergie's going to be telling me exactly what I think. And sure enough, he ripped into me, and I thought, oh, maybe might get hauled off at half time because he hadn't had a problem doing that with players in the past. And he said he ripped into me and said something. Any chance you passing to a teammate, that kind of thing. Plenty of expletives, and then he said, and I'm not taking you off. Don't think you're going to get away with that. Get yourself out there and sort it out. And remember, we're playing in red.
Jesus, he
and
loved you, Fergie, though, didn't he?
from that moment, the physio, whatever colour we were wearing, would whisper it to me just in every game we go. Remember, we're in black today. I remember we're in green and yellow today. I remember we're in white today. So that perpetuated out. I played a lot better in the second half. I might have scored in the second half, but I think if he respected me and I respected him, I think that's the kind of thing. I mean, I did get away with a lot with regards to my idea of humour and banter.
Yeah, it definitely seemed like I don't know whether it was a Scottish thing. I mean, he was Rangers, wasn't he? Not Celtic, but it definitely seemed like there was a sort of I don't want to say paternal, but
I think I might have been favourite-ish up until Eric Cantona came
yeah, yeah.
properly demoted.
What? So my other big United sporting fan is a guy called Matt who works for a music PR company called Good as Gold, and he wanted me to ask you what was your favourite United strip to play in.
I loved, well, let's go a couple of strips. I loved the green and yellow one, although I think it was just because of the colours, really, and the way it was. And we got a picture taken pre-season,
Yeah, yeah.
like it had been from those times, with the hair all brow creamed.
Paul Parker's got his little moustache.
There's only no, yeah, and there's only one person in the picture whose moustache is real, and I just loved that kind of thing. But I found out somebody told me recently that that's a bit of a fallacy actually because there was no colour in those days, but someone has managed to work out through the magic of how you can analyse photography now, and it was actually red and white.
Oh, what?
This is the claim. So the strip from Newton Heath is actually red and white. It's not green.
No way, really?
Yeah, and it's just Umbro come up with this idea that they would have green and yellow one.
I mean that totally scuppers the whole Glaciers Out campaign. If
Well, that's if this guy can prove it, then. But that's what somebody suggested to me, and I like the lace and all that. I just like the whole I like that kind of thing. But
yeah,
and,
yeah.
the black kit with a view cam on it as well was a cracking kit. I thought as well.
I mean, obviously you've done plenty of coaching, but you've never done that kind of that route that so many footballers take after they retire into management. Do you think that it's just the way that you think about things is so idiosyncratic that
Oh no,
you
because
wouldn't?
I did manage. I didn't manage. There's two parts to football now. There's an educational side and there's an still the emotional side. And I was supposed in a fortuitous situation that the education academic side of football had become so much more. There was so much more investment in it, and there was so many more opportunities in that. And when I went into coach the reserves and coach the youth team, and then became academy manager, and when I was academy manager at United, I was managing more people than Alex Ferguson
Yeah,
was managing. So, and I loved it, and I loved the responsibility of it. And we had great staff, great people, and it was wonderful to be involved with young people. Young people make you feel young, and our whole idea was my whole idea was everybody should be enjoying themselves. It's supposed to be enjoyable. Football's supposed to be enjoyable. Can these young people, when hopefully they will get a career, and several of them have managed to do that, both playing and at the next level, enjoy it because it's fairly relatively short time, you know.
yeah,
And my other thing was that I love doing that. So there's in that kind of that side of football, it tends to you can be in a situation for a lot longer. For a lot longer. The other side, the emotional side of the game, you're at the whim of results. Now the financial, more definitely the financial situation and the emotional side of the game is greater, but that's never been a driving factor for me. I love being part of what I was doing, part of a team, an academy team that was hopefully and creating a fun learning environment.
but what I'm saying though is, did you, because there was talk at one point. I mean, obviously you were Brian Kidd's assistant, but when there was talk of you being an assistant at United, and do you think you could have? Do you think you would have wanted to, and do you think you could have stepped up to being basically the boss?
Well, the first thing is that if Alex Ferguson had asked you to do something, so if he'd asked me to be in whatever situation with regard to first team, then I think that I would have had to have said yes because he knows more about me than I know about me, and he knows what he would be wanting for that particular position. So there was an opportunity for me to be um, in a different role with regards to being a general manager, but the and I can't remember, it might have been the Glazers, whatever at the time, wouldn't go with it, you know. But he was really keen in someone to look after a lot of the stuff that he felt now that he didn't want to be involved with. So player welfare, for example, family, all sorts of. They had a really good idea of what the job was, but they didn't go for it. And that would have been an interesting thing. That again, and I was happy doing what I was doing, but if he'd asked me to do it, I would have done it because it, as I said, it would be if he felt it was important enough in the club sense to do that particular role and he thought that was the right person, I would have taken that on board. But it didn't happen, and I'm grateful for the time that I spent there doing. Uh, uh, Again, being managed by him, even though he wasn't my line manager.
My brother-in-law would never forgive me. He's a Villa fan. If I didn't ask you something about Villa, what do you remember about that
It was
brief?
great. I mean, Villa won the league that year.
Yeah,
I feel that I was partly responsible because Dennis Mortimer, the captain, had the shiniest boots in the league at that time. I was playing these boots. And these boots were, I'll tell you what, they were the cleanest boots you'll ever see. And it was wonderful because we used to play practice matches against the first team as the youth team because the manager Ron Saunders thought that the reserves would want to kick the first team, probably rightly enough, to get into
yeah, yeah.
the first because there was only on match days there was only 12 got stripped. You know, there was only one sub. So I had a great 12 months, and you learn right away the two things. You've gone from an academic environment, school, 16 years of age, straight into an adult environment, and there was no consideration that you were 16. You were expected to be an adult, and it was a great learning. Lots of learning things with regards to football. I learned that it was the scout who was the guy who was involved for the scouting process, who really liked me as a player more than the coach of the youth team. So you learn that if in fact the coach doesn't fancy you, it's going to be a bit of a tricky thing.
Yeah.
And that's again, and that's that opinion. Whenever they were deciding who decide, sometimes the youth development officer got his way, and sometimes the coach would have an input. But when you get into that environment full time, it's quite clear that the coach, for whatever reason, doesn't fancy you. That's all right. You just got to get. I learned that right at 16.
Yeah.
So I've got to be able to please their coach.
What would you like to fill your days with going forward?
Oh, I'm happy filling my days with what I'm doing. I've got 3 grandchildren now. I like to see as often as I can. I like to go walking, listen to music, and mess about on my iPad playing some little games. We do the podcast as often as we can. It takes me a couple of days to do research for that, to find my whimsical opening or whatever it is I decide I want to ask.
Oh, living the dream.
Person, I do some question and answer stuff every now and again. I don't have a problem filling my days at all.
Amazing. Well, listen, let's leave this on music. What's the last thing you heard that you really enjoyed?
The last thing that I heard, well, the last thing that I did that I really enjoyed, I was really pleased that two things. I've got a friend, Raymond Mead, who plays in the Ocean Colour scene. So they were playing at Neighbourhood in Warrington.
Oh, nice.
And we went along to go mainly to watch them. But the Mary Wallopers were on as well.
Oh, okay, right.
So I had heard them, and I really liked them because I loved the Pogues. And they reminded me very much of an early Pogues.
Fantastic. I was on a bit of a Pogues kick a couple of years ago. It's kind of all I listened to. An amazing band. Listen, Brian, it's been so nice to speak to you, man. A proper treat. 10-year-old me, you properly made up for the day that I was so upset when you were kicking shit out of Nigel Winterburn. Thank you so much for talking to me, and I think everyone should go listen to your podcast because it is brilliant.
Oh, it's very kind of you. Thank you.
All right, man. Take care of yourself. See you later, Brian. Bye.
Bye.